like to call this meeting to order. This is the regular board meeting of the Chico Unified School District. And we were in closed session, but I do not have anything to report out. Right now we'd like to do the flag salute, so if you would please join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, the date is May 20th, 2020, and we are going to begin with announcements.
I thought it was action taken in closed session.
I just reported that there were none.
Oh, okay, all right.
So announcements, are there any board members or anyone present who has an announcement?
I would just like to let everyone know that we have sent out a survey both to our staff and to our parents asking for their input into next year. We've given several options. Parents should have received the survey and all staff members should have received the survey. I want to clarify that none of it is binding. We're just looking for input at this time so that we can start planning, knowing what staff desires are and parent staff desires are for next year. Knowing what we know now. We know a lot could happen over the summer and probably will. But knowing what you know now, how would you like to see next year?
Good. Okay. Anything else that anyone would like to contribute as an announcement? All right, we will move to items from the floor. So at this point, Erica, did you want to make mention of how anyone in the who is viewing this can submit any questions or comments?
Yes.
Liz, if I could just for a second. I
Sure.
need you guys to hold just for a second. I'm not getting audio out on the internet right now, so give me 1 second.
Okay.
We got a bit of a
We're gonna hold
technical
up
issue.
for just a minute because they are having technical difficulties.
I'm gonna figure out where it's broken.
Jim, do you happen to have a copy of the resolution for the classified
I do.
employees appreciation?
What?
Yeah, you know, because I'm on this screen and I may need to read that. So if I could have a hard copy, that'd be great. Thank you so much.
Liz, we're okay to go. It's just one of my laptops is having issues.
Okay, so we're good?
We're good. Sorry about that.
Okay, we are going to carry on. Did you want to mention that, Erica?
Yes, so anyone who wants to view the meeting can go to chicousd.org, and it also lists that comments and questions to address the board during the meeting may be sent to public.comment@chicousd.org. And that information is on our website. And that information is on our website.
Okay, thank you very much. Alrighty, next up would be our negotiations update.
So the only thing to report is that CSEA and the district mutually agreed to postpone our reopeners till August 1st because neither group has really had a chance to meet and discuss those, particularly CSEA. So we're just going to postpone that till August 1st, which is plenty of time before negotiations start in the fall.
Okay, thank you. And since we do not have anyone from our labor groups, I guess we're not going to hear anything from them. So we'll move on. Okay, next up is our consent calendar. Would any of the board members like to pull an item from the consent calendar?
I don't want to pull anything, Liz, but I really would just like to give a shout out to some of our staff like Tina Keene and Jim, who are continuing to work behind the scenes. Tina, there was a boatload of items for you to review, all the SIPSA and charter reports. Thank you. That was a lot of reading for us to do, and I had to go through you first. And Mr. Hanlon, all the employment things going on. So I just really want to give all of the staff, the administrative staff, that just, the consent agenda is so quick and it comes and goes. Jacqueline Kruger, all those warrants. Really, thank you. We appreciate it.
I second the shout out.
Right.
And I
Okay.
would move to approve the consent agenda unless there's someone who would like to pull an item.
Okay.
I believe that I need to pull 711 because I wasn't at the meeting last week. I can't approve the minutes for that one, I believe.
That's correct.
Okay.
Two.
Okay.
And then break 711 into two sections.
All right. Well, I will move to approve the remainder of the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay. Motion by Linda Hovey, second by Dr. Kaiser. All those in favor, we'll take a roll call vote. Dr. Kaiser?
I say yes.
Eileen? Oh, we need to unmute Eileen.
Hold on the space bar.
Unable to unmute.
I think I can do it after. Let me
Can
see.
she just do this on the?
She should be able to. Can she do it?
I'm back
She's
on.
there you go.
Good.
All right. How do you vote?
Robinson, aye.
Okay. Tom Lando?
Randall, aye.
Okay. Hovey? Aye. Griffin? Aye. Okay, so now we will address item 7.1, is it 7? No, yeah, 7.1, having to do with the board meeting minutes from May 6th. Does anyone,
I move 7.1.
I'll second that motion.
okay, motion by Dr. Kaiser, second by Eileen Robinson. Hmm? Yeah, this is split. The first segment, which had to do with the regular board meeting of April 15th, was what we passed along with
Okay.
all of the other consent items. This is a special one because Tom is not going to be voting on it since he was not in attendance at the meeting of May 6th.
Perfect.
So, the remaining four board members, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, that was also passed. Okay, so we will move on then to our discussion action calendar, and the first item is through Educational Services. It's a discussion action regarding student engagement and a distance learning update. Mr. Karas.
Thank you. Give Erica a second to pull up our slides. Okay, so we wanted to give the board an update on how distance learning is going as far as how engaged the students are, and share with you the parent feedback that we have received.
I've been seeing some of that on Facebook, actually.
I think we can chime in with some anecdotal.
Yes, I'm sure we can.
To the survey results I'm gonna share with you. So tonight, I'm gonna go over that parent survey, the parent survey data, the student engagement and participation data that our teachers have been collecting for the last 5 weeks.
Okay.
And our first look at ever at Chromebook usage data. Okay. So to start off, the parent survey went out last Friday, the 15th. We really wanted to know two things: what their preferences were, what they were comfortable with at this point, moving forward and looking forward into opening school next fall, and identifying areas of concerns that they have. And like Kelly mentioned, regarding the parent staff surveys earlier, in no way were parents making a choice of what they wanted to do or making any binding decisions. They were just simply giving our feedback with the information they have at this moment. So the three preferences were coming back in a traditional model, full distance learning, and a blended model, where some of the time would be in-person instruction and some would be online.
Tim, can I stop you right there? Did we get a good amount of surveys back? What are we talking
This survey, the data you see here was pulled yesterday morning, and we're at about 4,000 of that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
So usually when we send surveys, you know, the people that are gonna answer
Correct.
sooner, so we expect some to maybe trickle in, but
Okay.
it
So
should be
sample.
representative of the larger group.
Good.
So we saw 70% wishing for traditional school.
Not only that, but Kim, that this isn't 70% a teacher, I mean, a parent could have 3 kids in school. So we may be getting a much broader range of students, right?
Correct. Correct. And parents did, there were cases where they opted, parents with multiple children in our district opted for different models for different kids.
Sure.
So you'd
Makes
see
sense.
2 models within the same family. And then when we move forward into the other survey questions, we're kind of gauging parent concerns and how things were going with distance learning. One thing that's been on all of our minds is how concerned are parents about childcare. Okay, and that 48%, not at all concerned. This is the overall results, but the results are just as you would expect when you break it down by grade level. The younger kids, parents are more concerned, and then the high school parents, not very concerned. So it's just like what we all would have expected. Something that stood out to us, and the reason why it's on the first slide, is the question about how concerned parents are about social or emotional well-being.
Look at that.
And we see over
Wow.
50% concerned,
Wow.
or nearly 60% concerned or extremely concerned. So, as you know, and this likely drove the wish to return to the traditional model. But as you are all aware of, we have resources in place to address that when students return. And those, our school staff are still reaching out to students in the distance learning model.
So did you also ask the parents how they felt about their own mental health?
Yeah.
No.
No? Okay, that would have been a good one.
That was worth seeing on Facebook.
It's hard having the little ones at home. It's hard having big ones at home. Next, the top pie chart up there is how concerned are you about your child's educational progress? And we see about the same numbers, about 60% concerned or extremely concerned with that. We were happy to see that parents are very, very happy with the communication coming back from teachers. So extremely satisfied, well over 70%. And that one actually was, I'll move back to that. That one was in the secondary grades, teachers are communicating more with the students themselves rather than the teachers. So we did see a little dip there, but we know that teachers are pushing out lessons and communicating. Okay. Internet access, that's been on our mind since the get-go.
Yes.
And we
Look at
see
that. Wow.
83% with reliable high speed, and then that between reliable and high speed and reliable but slow, we're 97%.
That's amazing. Good.
So reliable but slow might mean they can't have a hard time video chatting on Zoom or something like that, but Google Classroom is not dependent on video, so there's less bandwidth, so it comes into play less.
And in all fairness, if they don't have reliable access, they probably didn't complete the survey.
Yes.
Good point.
That's true. Okay, how much of your day, well, then the survey, can be taken on a phone also.
Oh, okay.
So, and parents were texted the message. How much of the day is your child participating in learning activities from their school? The vast majority are in the most down to a little bit of the day, with, you can see some of the day, being the majority. But those are vague, it's hard to ask parents, you know, how many hours, et cetera,
Right.
because people are just kind of getting by doing schoolwork, whatever they can. Okay. Any questions about the parent survey data? All right, so for student engagement and participation, we began asking teachers to enter data on whether or not they had contact with the student during each week. Okay. Something to keep in mind when before I get to the next slide and show the data is that for secondary students, we only ask, for example, the first week we said, okay, teachers enter data for your first period, and that's it. Second week, teachers enter data for your second period. So this is a real, just a kind of a sample dipstick and
Okay.
more looking at trends than
Okay.
anything else. Because a student might not have communicated with that first period teacher. Maybe it was PE and he didn't need to. He got all the stuff done without communicating, but was in contact with the 5 other teachers. So
Okay.
when we look at the data, please take that into account. So again, we're looking more at trends than anything else with this data. We see the grade span, the elementary grade spans at the top there, maintaining that contact. And we do see a dip with our secondary students. Yeah, the junior high and high school grades, both similar dips.
What do you think all these kids are doing?
What do I think they're doing?
You want me to tell you?
Netflix and chill.
Yeah.
Xbox.
Yeah.
There's lots to keep secondary students busy.
I
They're more
mean,
mobile.
Yeah.
they're in the,
Yeah.
they're in the home, are they just, do you think they're just like on their phones and stuff and communicating that
Perhaps,
way? And
yeah.
talking and sharing,
Mhm.
it must be, right?
I would think so, yeah.
Because at least they have that, I mean, that's like their main means of communication anyhow, isn't it?
Right.
So
Right.
they probably aren't experiencing it as much as even we are.
Well, we've talked to some student groups, and you guys can chime in, and the overwhelming response from the kids is, we want to come back.
Mhm.
We want to come back to traditional
Is this
school.
the little ones or the?
High school
Oh,
too.
High school.
Really?
Yeah.
Junior high,
Yeah.
miss their friends, miss their teachers.
Mhm.
Oh.
Yeah.
Miss structure. The
Structure.
high school kids,
Yeah.
I think, both said they really miss the structure for school
Good.
projects.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's a pretty substantial tip though.
I was just thinking, yeah, that's.
They miss their friends, they
Yeah.
miss, things to do.
Mm-hmm.
They're bored to death.
So, John Shepherd, please feel free to jump in here, but I'll share what John keeps reminding us. Is that when we made the decision to hold students harmless for the grades at the secondary level,
Yep.
you have some kids that said, hey, I have the grade, I'm gonna pass, I'm gonna take the pass and the credit, and so I can kind of coast. Your kids that were getting the A's, that are, really high achievers, are gonna do everything they can to make sure they maintain that level. So, those will be some that are very much involved. But there's gonna be a group as well that say, hey, thank you very much, and we'll see you next year.
Yeah.
Well,
But there are kids that are working
Yep.
jobs to support their family.
Yeah. This is John Shepherd. I just want to reiterate what Kelly said. It's basically broken into thirds. You have the third who are working to raise the low grades, kids, the third at the other end who want to maintain the high grades for a variety of reasons. And then, like Kelly said, those ones in the middle, they like where they are, they're working, everything's going on, and it's one of the disadvantages of grading, and but definitely it's an expectation that we're putting kids home is things outside their control.
Alrighty.
Good.
Okay, next thing we're looking at is Chromebook logins. So we're able to take data out of our system that we use to manage the Chromebooks. At this point, this is our first attempt at looking at this due to the unique circumstance. So we don't have data prior to 4/16 that we can depend on. At this point, I expect that data to become available. And please note when we look at this, it's another, all of this data is kind of trying to help paint a larger picture. This is only logins per day. And we have stories of, kids logging in one day, doing, working the next day. So it's simply an indicator, and again, we're mostly looking at trends with this. And also, please note that this is Chromebooks only.
Okay.
So kids can log into any device, into their Google account and access Google Classroom or whatever. So this doesn't take into account any of that. So parents that are, for the younger kids that are really more involved in the distance learning, they might be logging in with their home computer. Okay. So this is the rate per day, and since April 16th, and that dotted line down the middle of the each level is the average. Or, I'm sorry, the trend line. So we see steeper trends down for elementary or for junior high and high school, and we see more of a maintenance, but still a trend down for the alt ed and elementary levels.
Gigantic. Right?
Say that again?
Gigantic. They hit the ice cube right in here. Ice cube.
Well, I think, one thing, speaking from the elementary standpoint, is that mid to late May, you're done with testing.
Yes, it's
They're
time
doing your
to-
special events, there's
Yep.
more field trips typically, the weather's nicer, you're lightening up a bit on the academics towards the end of the year. So that may play a part in some of this. Can't speak, never worked on a secondary site, but
When will we be doing the testing aspect? Is that?
we would have been done by now.
Okay.
Yeah. We typically would have been done last week. Then we make up, sorry.
Tim, just to talk about the secondary a little bit, I'll use my own daughter for example. She typically gets her work either Sunday night or Monday morning for her 5 or 6 classes, and she may only log in once or maybe twice more that week. And so that's just an example. It's not an excuse for the numbers. Obviously, kids, they log in in other ways as well. But that's just some anecdotal evidence. I know that's what my daughter's doing, and she's a middle of the road student, and she's able to get by with just doing that.
Thank you.
And I'll add just real quick, there's a lot of effort in the ed tech world right now into different ways of collecting and displaying this data. So we expect there to be more options as far as.
And as
what
Tim
we can
mentioned, it's a trend, and it's the trend that we saw in the prior one. I think it's a trend your parents will tell you as well. It's getting harder and harder to keep kids motivated and keep them engaged. And this is just another indicator of that. And another thing I think it shows us is that, one methodology for teaching may not be the best. They need that interaction, they need some online instruction, but there needs to be a variety, and after a certain period of time, just this one modality is probably not the best way to teach.
Well, the university students graduated this past week, and
That high speed
so the computer was on the
Tim, this is Ted Sullivan, just checking in elementary. I hear from a lot of parents that they're pretty out of gas also, because they're the ones that are actually kind of providing a lot of the instruction in the elementary world. And a lot of them are just really, really pooped. And like you said, kind of the end of the school year, gearing down, and their parents are feeling it also.
And the final slide gives weekly, so you can see the numbers are higher.
Interesting, okay.
So this would capture like John's daughter, he used as an example. So that's logging it at any point during the week.
So our junior highs are nice.
Yeah, they're doing really
Yeah.
well.
And you can see that the same trend down as we get later in the year. And that's all I have for you tonight. Any questions?
No, thank you though, it's very interesting information.
We'll probably end up sending out the parent one again in middle of July. We want to probably send it out 2 more times as it goes on. Are they still feeling this way, or more feeling they want to come back, or that kind of thing, so we get a true number of what to expect coming back to school.
And as news comes out, and word for the
What if we get to phase 3?
Stages change. Yeah.
But this matches what I said, they surveyed to professional educators with young kids at home, and they all have said their kids are on a downhill slide after about a month. They just
Yeah, it was novel for a while and now not so much.
Well, it just, I think, really reinforces the idea that live human being teachers that interact in, you know, that's what's necessary, so we'll never.
I don't think teachers have ever been more appreciated.
Exactly.
I mean, you get a light into what they do on a daily
Yeah,
basis.
I mean, you can see somebody's face on a screen, but it does not compare to having someone there, and especially the little kids with the, you know, they need hugs and they need to see your, you know, they need that, and then the older kids too need, you know, just the interaction and the enthusiasm that teachers bring to it, so.
They clearly said that they work harder inside a classroom with their teacher than they would in this model. They need their teachers there to continue to help them and push them along.
Well, yeah, and you know, just being in front of a classroom and teaching, and you know, you're seeing those kids who are not engaged, and you're able to reach out to them, and
Thank you, teachers.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, thank you for all this information, but I just, you know, and I'm sure this is everywhere. I mean, this is not specific to Chico Unified. I'm sure there's gonna be all kinds of studies across the country that, you know, corroborate that this is a trend.
You know, one thing I will say, and I'm gonna brag about our teachers again, is that I did read through the parent comments that came in with the parent surveys, and they were extremely complimentary of our teachers, of their lessons, of their communication primarily, that they are doing everything they can to support and reach out. And that's not true across the state and definitely not across the country.
Yes.
That those communications are not happening. So I think it just shows what we've known all along. We have the best of the best here.
Yes, we do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that was, this showed up as an action item, but I don't think there's any action that's required. So we will just move on, and the next one is an information item, and it's with Tina Keene, and it's regarding the COVID-19 operations written report.
Yes, hello. Typically, we would be planning on bringing our LCAP, our local control accountability plan, to the board in June. all over the state of California. As we know, that timeline has shifted and changed a bit due to the coronavirus. What the state guidelines have asked us to do is, by June, when our budget goes through, we, all LEAs, all districts in the state have been asked to prepare a COVID-19 operations written report for their district. LCAP will be pushed to December, kind of in more of the traditional model, although not the same template we are used to. We have yet to see what that will be yet.
Oh, boy.
And then hopefully by next June, we'll get back on track. So that's how things have shifted in that world. The COVID-19 operations written report had about 5 questions on it that each district was asked. They were a range of questions, from what we did, how is it affecting families, to nutrition services and how those were provided, to after school care, a variety of things like that. We were lucky to have a group input, as this has been from day one, a group input with everybody involved to help Chico Unified move forward through this well. That remained the same with this written report. Vince Sincero and his nutrition services team gave us information. We had information from DLC members, Carol Sylvester, Christy Bankson, and Stephanie Kniff, with the professional development pieces that they've been instrumental in providing for virtual professional development for teachers. John Vincent, as always, for technology. I don't know what we would do without him. And then just the expertise of the Ed Services team and administration across the board in our district. So the report was limited to about 300 words per question. So it's not a long report per se, but we feel we addressed the questions as best we could. And like Kelly mentioned, with what we see with the teachers, the same remains true all over our district, providing guidance and care and compassion for what we're all going through.
I thought it was very well done.
Yes, I did as well.
So this will come back to you with the budget and will be adopted with the budget, but we wanted you to know that this Ed Services team and the Business Services team, actually everybody working together, got this done within the week of it coming out, I think, because they said, we're doing this, we're already doing this, let's be proud of it and show what we're doing.
Oh, so we will have to approve this at some point?
Yes.
Oh,
Our
June
local
24th.
board will approve, then it goes to the county for not approval, but just for them
For
to
their
see.
review.
I thought we were approving it tonight. I think we would be willing to do that. But, okay, well, that's great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And did anyone, Eileen or Kathy, Tom, any questions for Tina?
I was just very happy to see the recognition given to nutrition about how tremendously they have worked and expanded. Butte County is officially designated a food desert, which means there are large areas that can't access fresh food. And the scale of the meals that they were providing and the quality are really amazing. I would encourage everybody, today's now too late, I think, but on Wednesdays you can order a quote-unquote family meal for a Friday pickup.
Yep.
And it's overwhelming in the amount of what you get, but also the quality is very high. So I'm seeing a lot of very positive comments from people who have done that. So just really encourage, that one they pay for. So it's like $15 for one meal, but one meal fed us for 2 days, you know, it
Wow.
was quite generous.
That's
So
great.
I was very impressed.
Thanks for the feedback on that. Anyone else?
Yes, thank you very much, Kathy, that was very nice.
Okay. Alrighty, so we will move on then to our next item. Thank you, Tina. Which is a business services item, and it's informational, and it's regarding the state budget and impacts to our district. And Kevin's going to give us that.
You have to come up to this table, right?
There?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was our deal.
This one?
Self.
Big deal.
So I have been talking about the possibility of a recession
You
since
have.
I think the second year I arrived at Chico Unified.
Yes,
What was the
indeed,
first
you
year?
have.
I believe I have overachieved. But
Can't do it.
not quite sure, Kevin, I'm gonna go through this real fast, and I'll let you ask that question as we go. So let me just, I'm gonna show you about 13 slides. It's a very summary look at what we heard from school services earlier this week. But let me just, right out of the gate, tell you this is bad.
Yes.
This is, in 2008, I was at Butte County Office of Education. We were doing fiscal oversight of school districts. We weren't sure how we were gonna survive. This is worse than that, just to paint that picture. The challenge is not to be alarmist, and we don't know everything yet, but at the same time, I do want to just be very honest that we have some very tough fiscal times ahead of us. Okay. So I'll walk through this.
You are breaking it up really, really bad.
So are you.
So are you.
Oh,
Okay, I'll try and speak louder and hopefully it gets better. But just to point out, California is in essence a country in of its own. It's the 5th largest economy at this point in the world. So as the economies in the world go, so certainly does California. And it points out, it's often said, if a nation gets a cold, then California actually gets the flu. We're very dependent and we're a large player in the global economy. Just to put this in perspective, we are actually dealing with deficits in the current year, 1920, and projected deficits in funding in the 2021 year. And you're gonna hear the number $54 billion. And that is the number over those 2 years. So just to quantify that. Also, you'll hear that, and I have been hearing the state have put all this money aside in the rainy day funding. Yes, there was a lot of money, $16 billion. Well, they're going to use all of those dollars in the next 3 years. The law does not allow them to take out more than half, and they are planning on taking half of it out for next year's budget. So just a picture of the finances related to Proposition 98. This is the guarantee funding that we have for schools in the state budget. And you can see that if you look at, there's always, keep in mind, 3 budgets in play, quite frankly. So we're dealing with next year's budget right now, 2021, but we still have the tail end of what happened all the way back to 1819 as we have ADA and changes being reported, and then what is currently happening in the fiscal year we're currently in. And you can see just in the year we're in, we were expecting back at just the governor's proposal in January, $81.6 billion. We're already projecting now that that's going to be down to 77.4 in the current year. And next year it gets even more scary. We were projecting $84 billion. That projection is now down to 70.5. And you can see we have enjoyed over the last, since 2011-12, some strong growth in education funding. I think it represents some of the good things we've done related to social emotional support and technology and things we've been able to do that are good for kids.
We just got caught up on our funding. Remember we had that?
Yeah.
The target funding.
we
and-
did. We just got caught up.
So those of us that were around education, Linda, I know you were here for this, we dealt with deferrals.
Yes.
So the idea that we owe you money today, but we're going to pay you tomorrow. And it's not,
Next year.
exactly, and it's not generally accepted accounting principles, because we record the receivable on our end, and the state does not report it, the payable on theirs, but this is one way of dealing with quote-unquote a cut. So we will have a cash deferral in the current year, 1920. Our June apportionment, the entire portion will be moved from June 30 to July. Now, we're very fortunate, we have good reserves, and our cash balance was projected to be 30 million. So that is not a huge impact for us in the current year. However, for next year, they're projecting the April, May, and June apportionments would be deferred into July and cross fiscal years.
Unbelievable.
So we will be talking about trans. Some of you, I think when you were on the board, you heard this before. It's a tax revenue anticipation note. We sell the instrument on the market, we get the cash, and then the state pays us, we're able to pay that back. So we'll be looking at options to manage our cash in the future. So this is just what the May revise is now projecting. There is a statutory COLA calculation, because that tends to trend more historically at 2.31. Before it was 2.29 at the January piece. And then you're gonna hear the 10% cut. So the way this is going to work is the COLA, the cost of living adjustment, will be applied at 2.31, and then they'll cut us at 10%. So the real impact is closer to something to 7.92% is what school services is projecting at this point. But this is, again, just the LCFF dollars. So I just want to try and put some framework around the dollars we're talking about for Chico Unified, and there's really two looks at this. One is, what were we projecting at January for our LCFF revenue? And in January, we were projecting, based on our ADA, and a slight growth, $115,954,000. At the May revise for next year, we're only estimating, when using the same enrollment projections, $104 million for a net loss of over $11 million. But you also then want to take a look at where are we year over year. So at second interim, the current year 1920, we were projecting that we would receive $113 million in the 1920 year. So then if you compare that to the cut that we're experiencing, that's really a loss of $8.6 million. So the year over year, what we received this year compared to where we'll be next year is a loss of just under $9 million. But again, if you take a look at what we're projecting to receive and then what we're receiving, that's a big hit. There is a glimmer of hope related to special education. The governor is continuing to propose that the base rates for special education funding would be increased to a new average of $645 per ADA within the AB 602 model. Those are dollars that are passed through the SELPAs, special education local plan areas. So we, in our SELPA, are below that. We're around $590, I want to say $8 per ADA. So we will see an increase in state dollars that will come into the county through the AB 602 model. So we're not exactly sure how much Chico Unified will receive that, but we represent about 40% of the SELPA. So there's expected additional revenues for special education.
That's good, then we'll have a little offset on what our contributions are to the restricted program.
Exactly. So it does reflect a 15% increase, it does have the COLA combined, and it does maintain all the other existing programs within AB 602, so there's a couple of additional add-ons within that. But all the requirements of governance and accountability within special ed continues. Another flexibility or hope that the governor is looking to provide is related to retirement costs for the employer, for the school district. And the governor is proposing to take $2.5 billion and put it into the reserves for the unfunded liability, which would reduce the contributions that employers have to make. So at our second interim, we were projecting that the rate for PERS in 2021 would be 22.68. Now we're projecting it at 20.7, and that's a real cost reduction for us in the short term. This is, again, a short-term solution, because if you look at here, it does ratchet back up over time, but we certainly appreciate.
Can you take a guess at what that savings, what we would see in savings from just that 2% difference?
We are working on that number. I know Jacqueline and Marie are working on that, in this sense, kind of plug that number, but I don't have it off the top of my head.
And another question, do you know if this is specific to schools? Or is it municipalities?
This is specific,
government?
Yeah, this is specific to schools. Municipalities actually have their actuarial calculation done individually.
I see.
Schools across California have a set rate across the entire state.
That's right. Okay. Thank you.
And the same is true for STRS. We were projecting that next year would be 18.4%, and that will go down to 16.15. And then you can see that rates then do increase a bit in the out years. But again, these are real savings to our
Yeah, it
budget,
gives us
which will
some
help.
breathing room
It
next
helps.
year.
It is something.
A little bit.
So you're hearing a lot of news about federal support possibly. We know that the CARES Act was in fact adopted, and Chico Unified will receive some CARES Act dollars. Our projection of that is about 2.5 million at this point, and we'll receive those next year. But those are one-time dollars in nature.
And we know for sure we'll get 2.5.
That's the projection right now. Yes.
Nothing for this year, that's money for this year that we will receive in 2021?
Correct. 2021, yeah. We just think that cash, by the time we apply for it, the money
Yep.
goes from the federal government through the state.
Yeah, it's a
We'll receive it after
winding
July.
road.
Right, exactly. So we do know the governor has made a request for over $1 trillion in aid from the federal government. And you have heard about the HEROES Act, I assume. That's a $3 trillion package that was in fact passed by the legislature, but we're hearing that's really not supported at the Senate at this point in time. And I think there's also a threatened veto at the presidential level. So just a summary of some of the flexibility options that the governor is proposing at this time. Sorry, was there a question? Okay.
Yes, Kevin, I had a question. This is Eileen. On your charts on the percentages, I didn't catch what each percentage's savings is. Is it about 100,000?
We don't know yet.
Eileen, we're still calculating that, and we'll be able to provide that as a pullout within the budget, because we've already pulled position control as it relates to budget development, so I'll have to get you that number.
Okay, that's what they're working on. I missed the topic of what they were working on. Thank you.
And we're almost done. So here's a couple of the flexibility options to use. One is if the district had a hardship related to cash, they could apply to be exempt. Not likely to be granted, but they could do that. The calculation for RRMA, the routine restricted maintenance, remember back in 2008, they actually waived our 3% requirement, which was very helpful. That is not the case at this point. However, the governor has said that he would like to exclude the PERS and STIRS costs within the total calculation. So when we charge 3% of the total budget, it's without the PERS and STIRS costs in total. So that will reduce the amount we contribute about $400,000. So that would help. That means less projects get done.
Right.
But it
For
helps
cash flow.
related to the unrestricted budget, correct. So we're talking about interfund borrowing increases, which might help with cash, special education, some authority to provide services remotely and online.
So I have a question. In the past, you know, when we were going through all this horrible stuff, 2008 to 2012, if I recall, we did have occasion where we did have to do some fund borrowing. And what I was just wondering, is the development fund that we're voting on tonight, is that one of the ones that that you can take money out temporarily from in order to help with cash flow? The
developer fees?
Developer fee fund 25?
Yeah.
I would need to look at that, Liz, I'm not sure. Typically, we borrowed, I'm not aware in Chico that we've actually borrowed from our cafeteria fund, for instance, or a fund 41 or 42 for our redevelopment agency funds. It's actually been the opposite, and Jacqueline's brought to you those resolutions every year where our cafeteria fund or child development fund, because they're reimbursement programs, they often run short of cash, so we borrow from the general fund into those restricted funds. So that's something we would have to do some research on to see if we have the available resources.
So we don't know at this point if you could, because for some reason I thought we did do that we temporarily took from the developer fee fund.
We did
because
interfund borrowing, but I can't remember which fund we
I
borrowed.
thought it was
We
that
did do
one,
interfund borrowing.
and then we put it back. And then we put it back, and I think we put it back with interest or whatever, right?
Correct.
And,
This is pretty fiscal, and I do believe you're correct, because I think we did do that at one point, we borrowed developer fees and we put them right back.
So another example of having cash in those other funds is helpful.
right, that's what I was thinking about, because I know that's coming up further in our agenda. And, I just thought, wow, hadn't thought about that before.
Yeah, we're gonna need to think about things we haven't thought about for a while, especially related to cash management.
Okay, thanks for that.
Okay. Also, back in 2008, if we sold assets from the general fund, we could actually use those for general fund purposes, whereas right now that law sunset. So if we sell property, it has to be used for, it has to be used specifically for buying another building. You can't use that for operations or for general fund. Unrestricted, it has to be restricted to capital improvements. So this will allow us to sell property and possibly use that. Not really a good fiscal move, but as time gets more difficult, flexibility will be needed. And then last, some teacher accreditation issues, just in the timing, pushing some of those requirements back. So this is kind of our response to this point, because things are moving pretty quickly. But when we look at a preliminary plan, we are in the process of budget development. We'll be bringing that to you at the next meeting in June, and then have approval on June 24th. And we won't know probably what the full budget is yet from the state. They may pass it hopefully by June 15th. But even then, the type of program that we're looking at, the delay in taxes from the state, there's going to be more conversations around the budget even past that time. So from just a planning perspective right now, we really looked at, if we're going to receive $8 to $9 million less in revenue, we wanted to look at a cut of $2 to $4 to $6 million. And so we took a look at what was the $2 million, and that doesn't work very effectively because we do have some deficit spending already going through our budget. So if we only cut 2%, we're not getting further in. So then we started talking about $4 million, roughly half, a little less than half of the loss in the LCFF revenue. It would be difficult, but it's something we think we probably could accomplish. But it's also not cutting so deep when we have all these unknowns. And then the idea that if we went to $6 million, you're really taking almost 2/3 of the loss in revenue in 1 year. That is pretty dramatic and draconian at this point with the flexibilities that the governor's proposed today. So at this point in time, from a fiscal perspective, our recommendation is we look at $4 million of cuts for the 2021 year, which means business services will look at $2 million worth of cuts, education services will look for $2 million worth of cuts. Now, I will just make a comment. I think our ed services group, I'm just really impressed that they know their budgets as well as they know them. And so, to their credit, they've gone through these conversations the last couple of years about what is our priority. So I think they're really prepared to at least have these harder conversations and be able to move pretty quickly. And we've done the same thing on the business service side. I will say this is not where we want to be. We're not happy about doing it. But if we cut today into the 2021 year, that has such larger benefits for our budget in a multi-year setting. If we wait, it's going to get much larger and much more difficult to deal with. I would also then point out, Chico Unified is poised to handle this, I would argue, better than almost any other school district for a couple of reasons. One, here's our reserves. Our unassigned fund balance is $7.8 million. Our reserve for economic uncertainties is 4.7. The board wisely has set aside an additional 2%, which is about 3.1 million. And then we set aside the additional 18-19 one-time funds at 1.8. So we have reserves, and we're going to need to use them. So this is similar, and I believe if you were around in 2008, you know what happened is we received an influx of federal dollars through the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, and we deficit spent for 2 years. And then we received the influx of school fiscal stabilization funds, and our fund balance increased, and then we deficit spent for years. So we're gonna be in that same pattern. But if we sit back and we don't address cuts into the 2021 year, we're gonna be behind the 8 ball and may not be able to catch up. We're not alone. I think every school district is going to be going through this. To our credit, we are a small to medium-sized school district in comparison to the state of California. So I think we're a little more nimble than the LA Unified person. Also very fortunate to have good relationships with our bargaining units. This is gonna be hard, but I think our relationship's strong enough we can have some difficult conversations.
Do we have any feedback about, we just had property taxes that were due in April. Were people paying their property taxes?
It was a similar question, may I tag on to it? School services is great, they've always been spot on over the years, but what has the legislative analyst office said? Similar.
Right. Legislative analysts put out some reporting today, and they actually kind of mirrored what
Did
the
they?
governor said
Oh.
in his projections, which frankly talk about that L recovery and not the U recovery. So at this point in time, the LEO, from what I read, is really in support of what the governor's been trying to do here for the most part. Related to property taxes, we're not seeing necessarily drop in property taxes locally. However, remember, if that happens, it just means the state has to pay more.
Right.
So it just causes more pressure on
Right.
them.
Right.
And remember, property taxes are on assessed valuation, not market valuation. So often we kind of get wrapped up that, well, we've seen the market drop by so much. Well, a high percentage of the homes in Butte County were bought 30 years ago, and their assessed valuation hasn't increased. So the property tax numbers aren't as vulnerable to fluctuations that we see in total.
Even in light of the campfire?
Land of Campfire, again, in our area, we have not seen the drop in assessed valuation. Certainly that has been true in Paradise, that has not been true in Chico.
Yeah, I was just kind of curious to hear that. Okay, well.
So that's.
That was sobering.
Okay,
Thank you.
any questions for Kevin? Other board members out there?
Let me just look at the questions that came up in the chat real quick. The 1% of stirs and purse, I think you already answered that. Okay.
Kelly, I'm still having a question about that, the deadline for making decisions to get school open, about where does it lie?
So Eileen, we're looking at the feedback that we're getting from parents, but at the end of the day, we will have to follow whatever guidelines are in place by both state and local. Locally in Butte County, we're in phase 2, which does not accommodate opening of schools physically at this point. We are certainly hoping that we are allowed to open, and then at that point, we'll have to have conversations about what does that look like? Does that mean, masks? What does that mean? Because there is cost associated with that as well.
My question was more budget related. My question was more budget related. If we don't have a window to do anything other than furloughs with certificated staff, is that correct?
So Eileen, I think you're referencing that there is education code that if we have a reduction in 2% of revenues, we open up a new layoff window for certificated staff as of August 15th. Is that your question?
That was my question. Couldn't remember what the criteria was. I know what it is for classified, but I wasn't sure about certificated.
Yes, we believe that window will open, but there are some very prescriptive timelines for us to follow, and we'll be looking more closely at that.
Eileen, we are looking at that possibility, and, if we have to tighten our belt in order to get through this year, then, there are options. We can look at furloughs, but that has to be negotiated. We can look at layoffs for positions that aren't absolutely essential to the classroom, and that's tough to do, but we're doing it.
So no matter what, we don't have a lot of time left. I'm so appreciative of all of the heads being put together, not just now, but like you said, Ed Services and others have been talking about worst scenarios nearly every year, and I really appreciate that we are, in fact, a little bit ahead of the curve.
I can tell you, every day for the last 2 weeks, there have been discussions about budget, where we can reduce, and what are the biggest impacts to the classroom.
Kevin, did you say the June apportionment is deferred? Like
Correct.
next month's apportionment? They
Correct.
didn't give a lot of lead time to a lot of the smaller schools that maybe don't have quite the reserve. That's rough.
That is right.
Whoa.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, if nobody has any other questions on this issue, we will move on to another information item, which.
Liz, you're not looking at my hand. It's right.
Oh, I'm sorry, Kathy, I didn't see your hand. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so, my context for this is, I think one of the things that Kim's data showed us is that many of these kids are gonna come back to school with pretty severe disruption, not just of their schedule, but of their context of what school's gonna mean and being in the classroom, etc. So I really think we have to be looking at the whole child, and when we decide what kinds of economic savings that we can make, and you know, I thought that Kevin said if we do furloughs, it's gonna be all the divisions, as a approach. So that would mean, cutting a day of school, is that what you meant, Kevin?
No, we would not be able to cut a day of school unless the legislature takes action, which would allow us to do that. So that is not part of our conversations right now. That was a flexibility that was granted back in 2008.
Yeah. So we would somehow try to do staggered days off? Is that what you mean by furloughs?
No, it was just generally the furloughs that we saw back in 2008, and that flexibility is something that we think we'd like to at least be able to have, whether or not we actually were able to implement it.
Yeah, I just, when Kelly started off by saying, you know, first we had the dam, and then we had the fire, and now we have the virus, we have a lot of students, especially the younger ones, who have had so much disruption that it's, they're gonna need, easing into their educational patterns, so I think it's gonna be really important.
Okay. Kevin, I have one more question. How are we going to do this logistically? Because we're going to have to look at cuts, whether it be program, staff, whatever, and then approve the budget before July 1. And so will we have to have an extra meeting to?
So we think what's gonna happen is that, because we don't know yet what the final budget looks like, we're going to present to you a budget that is really a budget that does not have cuts built into it. So it's a worst case scenario. And I'm not sure, we've already contacted Butte County Office of Education in that multi-year look. Are we immediately qualified? Which we might be.
Yeah, exactly.
So the goal then is to then bring back a list, and possibly maybe even at the same time, of possible cuts within that. Hopefully up to that $4 million at the same time. But there's every expectation on our part that we're gonna have to bring back an updated budget shortly after.
Right, well, that's normal.
It is, there's the 90-day, there's material increase that we have to bring it back to you, but I think more than ever, we're gonna need to bring it back to you once we have a better sense of what's happening, once the state budget is fully adopted with all the omnibus and trade bills.
Absolutely.
So it is gonna be one of those, we're gonna give you the worst case scenario, knowing, I think, supporting the need for cuts, which I think will give you better information, which when you have to make those very difficult decisions to know what the impact of those will be. And it was very interesting to hear Tim talk about the need for those social services and the whole child. And in my mind, knowing what I was about to present. Because this is gonna be difficult. And you're gonna hear more about the conversations in 2008, we talk about the core program. Because these cuts are so big and so draconian at this point, based on what we know today, that conversations around what the core program is gonna be more of the focus, unfortunately, from a fiscal perspective.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, yes, Eileen?
Thank you. It's on the subject that we were just discussing about cuts and priorities. And I know we've said a lot about social emotional on the kiddos. When we look at the services that the targeted case managers provide, not only to the students, but the families, we have a lot of issues in our families. And that particular position is one that, you know, that I continue to support wholeheartedly. I know we may not have a choice, but providing family support is another way of helping provide support to the students.
Yeah. I agree. Okay, thanks for that. Okay, I think, are we ready now to move on? We will move on then to some information about the Life Touch building purchase, due diligence.
Yes, so I'll introduce Matt Galloway with RG Architects. He's been working with us on looking about the Life Touch building. I'll switch
Look
out.
at Matt, he knows, come right up
Yeah,
to the
I
table,
like to
he's
see.
on it.
That seat was really hot.
Thank you, could you put that back over again?
The hot seat.
The hot seat, no, I think it's already, I think it's probably already pretty hot. Based upon that last discussion, I can only imagine.
Thank you, Tim.
So as Kevin mentioned, my name's Matt Galloway. I'm a local architect and have had the privilege of working with Kevin and Julie here for the last few months on a feasibility study for how the district might fit into the Life Touch building on the other side of town. So, waiting for the PowerPoint to come up.
I'm glad you know what you're doing, Erica.
Yeah.
It's just running a little bit slow today, I apologize.
It was there. Yeah, but you have to go down to share screen. Quite right.
I was gonna say to Matt, you think you got all dressed up, since we're just looking at you.
Yeah. My wife doesn't let me leave the house in jeans and t-shirt anymore. She's tired of looking at that at home through all this, so.
It just must be different.
Not sure.
Well, this is perfect, because Kevin told me I only had 5 to 10 minutes, so.
There we go. Got it.
All right. So we'll move into the next and talk a little bit about what our role has been. We engaged in a contract to conduct a study of the ability to fit all the departments into that proposed location. We met with appropriate department leaders and team members of those departments to assess what the needs were. We walked all the existing departments to get a sense for how those spaces work now and how they don't necessarily work now. Most of them work pretty well, actually. So we assessed the existing building on Fair Street and got a good look at what major components of infrastructure were there that we wanted to try and maintain. So for instance, there's a beautiful entry to that building, a lot of good size and adequate restrooms, there's a truck dock, there's on-site power generation. So we wanted to try and make sure that we worked around those items. And then we were working to generate preliminary space plans that are for conceptual purposes, to get a sense about how the departments can work together in this building. There's nothing that we are saying is set in stone with any of those plans or the plans that we're going to share with you here. But they show how the space plan might work and give us an indication about whether the building in fact is large enough for all the district to move into, like we're talking about. And finally, we also took a look at the site plan, because it's a pretty good sized piece of property, actually 2 properties. And then with that study in mind, we had the ability to go through and talk about what potential might be there for the district in the upcoming decades. So this whole study started with a great spreadsheet that Julie and company worked through, and they had a list of basically the wish list, but the list of what programmatic functions that they had. Then we went through and worked back to a series of 3 schematics and continued to resolve the 3rd schematic as we went through. So as we were going through working our schematics, we would continually test how the space that we could provide in that space plan that we're working through, how it compared back to the original numbers that Julie and company worked out. So as we worked through actually 7 different models at the end of it, our first 3 basic tests were how much could we fit into the building as it is?
Right.
How much could we fit into the building if we were to add an additional mezzanine space, the 2nd floor, because there is opportunity and height to do that. And then kind of what's a better balance? What's a more logical balance to how that worked as a 3rd scheme? And that 3rd scheme is really what we kind of settled on and continue to work through and refine. That's why we ended up actually with seven schemes, excuse me. All of the schemes, again, like we talked about, this is the first scheme. How much can we fit into the floor plan as we are? And we don't need to get into the details other than we're talking about all the different departments are color coded here, and then actually looking at space for each one of them. Thinking about how they might fit based upon the fact that there's a good and excellent wayfinding entry that's already in place. We talked about an existing patio and exposure to the front that we wanted to take advantage of with certain elements. We talked about existing, this is dragging a little bit, huh? We'll wait for that red bar. Oh, the existing truck docks, it's not as bad as I thought. Obviously, expensive elements for the roof. Existing generator and infrastructure so that there is ability to generate power on site. And then finally, the existing restroom. So as we go through and look at these next 3 schemes, just kind of on a loose basis, we realize that we're trying to take advantage of all the locations and work around those infrastructure that's in place as a cost savings measure, obviously. So the 2nd scheme that we worked through was actually that 2-story approach. One interesting thing that you'll see with this is that we had the shop in the upper right-hand corner that ended up being immediately adjacent to the school, to the independent study school, to Oak Ridge. And that didn't seem like a very good mix. And additionally, we had the bus and transportation maintenance shop in the middle. And those didn't seem to be very good mixes, both from a noise generation standpoint and just from a code standpoint. There's a lot of things that we would have to go through. So ultimately, we kind of settled on this scheme where we took those functions and moved them into a separate building. Currently, they could continue to exist in this approach off Carmichael, but eventually they could come over on site. One interesting thing with Scheme 3 is that we do end up with some extra space. I think it's important to have some flex space and the ability to grow or to change departments within that. Additionally, with this schematic, so we detached the transportation component and they would have their own building off-site in this proposal. Moving attention here to the site really quick, just so everybody's aware, we're actually looking at two different sites. We have the first site that has the existing building at approximately 10 acres. The second site is not developed at present, approximately 6.35 acres. The existing building is about 53,000 square feet. And at this point, proposed just to kind of remain that same square footage. One thing that the site, I'm going to be patient here and see where there we go. The site, and particularly the undeveloped portion of the site, has a lot of existing trees. And also a very unique waterway. So associated with that waterway is also a very unique floodplain. So that last wave that came in through there shows where the floodplain is. Although you can build on that floodplain, there are specific needs and requirements that would have to be met in order to do that. So for the purposes of this study, we were trying to see if that new building were to come forward, how would it fit in the areas that were outside of the floodplain? Give it a second here. Okay. So if we removed a portion of those trees that showed from the last slide to this one, we have the ability then to develop that portion and keep a building outside of the floodplain. So the previous building that we showed for transportation on one of those early sites fits onto the site without any disruption of the floodplain. The truck and traffic portions, again, entirely, the bus traffic entirely subject for discussion. Ideally, we would go through and find ways to maybe preserve some of the trees that are on site. There are requirements from the city of Chico for mitigation. We do have some opportunity on the site, if you look up on the left side, to mitigate some of the trees on site. But for the most part, we may end up having to pay the city of Chico for mitigation for some of the trees. I have a landscape architect who has been working on proposal, or who actually is engaged in his part of the proposal to give an assessment of what the potential costs of mitigation of those trees might be. Fortunately, none of them are registered heritage trees, or those would have to be registered with the city. We don't have any of those. So Brian Firth is a landscape architect who's going through working on that, and then we also have engaged the services of a cost estimator who's working on potential costs for the proposals that are before you in terms of schematic free and a separate line item for the standalone transportation goal.
And just for clarification, the goal is to keep as many trees as we can, quite honestly. So we know it provides a nice buffer for the neighbors on the Paseo Compañeros, and I will mention that meeting when that's done.
So at this point, yeah, I think that's kind of where we're standing about there. So if there's any questions, I'd love to answer them. The potential building that we talked about is about 13,000 square feet.
So for what you were saying, we don't know what any sort of cost estimates would be to produce and implement the plans that you have, both for the secondary site and converting the building that exists.
Correct. We're working on that. This is kind of an interim report to you to kind of show where we are at this point. And I think that when the final report's ready, we'll have those all ready.
When do you think that might be?
7 to 10 business days. So fairly soon.
Okay, that's great. That's what we'd like to see.
Actually, yeah, we just engaged that individual to do that, and so his 7 to 10 business days is holding me about 3 hours a day.
And as a reminder to the board, this will be on each of the agenda items with the idea that we're bringing to you a final recommendation on the purchase of this on June 24th.
Right. We will have one meeting
Before that.
Correct. Okay.
And that meeting will be about the financing component of this, and then hopefully some of the cost estimates as well.
Okay. And there is no, at this point, there was no looking around there or anything about Oh, you were mentioning as far as the, like the traffic or anything like that, where we know that that's gonna be okay to tie into Fair Street. I think that was a real concern that the neighbors had. I know he hasn't talked about it yet, but,
Yeah. Let me comment on that, because we did
Yeah.
meet with the neighbors in the area off of Fair Street, Paseo Campaneros. We did that on May 14th.
oh, great.
And we had maybe 10 people participate. And I think when you boil it down, their main concern isn't our general operations and moving into the current existing building, it's the development of this additional property related to transportation. And I think their concerns really are in two main areas. One is traffic on Fair Street, which is not a very wide street, and the second is noise. So, as a point, we don't have immediate plans to develop this because we would need to sell or have a land lease at the courtyard property before we move transportation over. And if we were to develop this, and when we were to develop this, we would have to go through a CEQA process. So we would have to go through all the environmental studies and comply with all the laws as far as engaging the public and giving comment. So we would certainly do that at this time. I will point out, I did receive an email from one of the neighbors, and with your permission, I'd read that to you.
Sure.
She does write, this is Kristen Johnson, and she does write, we would like you to consider two options. One is try and keep all buses at our current location, at the courtyard. And two, divide and sell west end of property from the drainage ditch to the last end of the property on Fair Street. Residents are interested in purchasing the land along the creek, and it says this would give you funds to keep the buses where they currently are.
That drainage ditch, for everybody's reference, is roughly at the left side of the yellow layout for buses. I'd point if I could, but I don't think.
Yeah, we need a little point there. Okay, all right, any questions from people who are in, remote?
My hand up.
Her hands up. Kathy typed in a question, what about using the lower part to make a natural landscape barrier where you have the plot number?
Yeah, so actually it is an inherent natural landscape barrier. The civil engineer who was engaged in locating all of the trees in that area reported that he and his crew had poison oak readily every week in that region because it was very tough to navigate down in that area. So at this point, we're not planning or proposing any improvement on that area to the south, where the plot number is.
Well, my real question would be, could we accent the barrier to the creek by, a rock barrier or raising the land level? Is any of that possible without poison oak?
It's absolutely possible, and in many cases, when the CEQA analysis is done, there's requirements for that to occur. I know that we've been involved in several sound studies within the city of Chico. A very recent one for Sierra Nevada Brewery actually required that there was a block wall that was put adjacent to the trucks that they have idling in that region. So again, that would be part of the CEQA analysis, and there will be a sound recommendation at that point.
This is Julie Crystal. One of the neighbors at the meeting that I attended was also concerned with the view from her property. She's directly across the creek from where the buses would be parked. And she said when the trees lose all their leaves, she can see right through there. In addition, our sound study that we performed, there will be a recommendation for some sort of sound barrier, a wall or fence that has some screening that would hopefully mask some of the noise resonating across the creek. as well as, blocking the view for that area.
Okay. Thank you, Julie. Okay, any more questions for Mr. Galloway? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate
pleasure.
your coming.
Thank you.
Don't forget. I'm ready. I'll get it for you.
I'll get it in a note, just hold on to it. Yep, okay, thanks.
Thank you. Alrighty then. Okay, so I guess we will move on to our next item since that was purely informational, and this is a discussion action item regarding the property boundary line adjustment at Marsh Junior High.
Yes.
Kevin?
We were approached by City of Chico and a local developer that we have property that the district owns that is to the south of Marsh Junior High School. It is currently not within the gate or the fenced-in area. It is property, we'll try and pull a picture up for you, that is not being used by the school site. It's somewhat of a triangle shape and somewhat odd and really doesn't provide the district much of a value. However, for purposes of the City of Chico, they have a grant application to widen Bruce Road. And part of that grant provides for some additional low-income housing to be provided. And the developer that approached us has designs that the entry point to their new development would be on that property which we currently own. So it was actually a nice opportunity and conversation to have. Originally, we thought we might be able to do some kind of trade of work for improvements at Citrus Elementary School. You can understand that would provide some additional challenges for the developer to the point where we just came to an understanding of a dollar amount for consideration at $75,000. This dollar amount is consistent with an appraisal we've had done at Canyon View for open ground property. And again, we don't have a plan to develop it specifically. So the goal here really is to see if the board would enter into and approve a boundary line adjustment, whereas we allow the developer to take and record the property in their name. And in doing that, they then provide consideration of $75,000 to the district. There was a change in the agreement, I would point out, from the one that was originally put in the agenda. The change added under 2.1.21 and 2.1.22 some additional requirements that needed to be met before the consideration of $75,000 was paid. And that was approval of this agreement by you, the district board at Chico Unified, and that the city would approve the reporting of the boundary line modification application itself. So you can understand from their standpoint, they want to make sure that that work was completed before they paid.
Okay. So can I ask some what ifs? So you said the city had an application to widen Bruce Road. What if the application is denied? Will this development still go through? Will the developer pull away, but we will still have deeded him that property? So kind of, what if?
Sure. I think that's always a possibility.
Right.
So I can't say specifically what the developer, but they are here in person, so they can answer those questions. But again, I think from our standpoint, we would get consideration for a piece of property we're not currently using.
That's
and then allow the developer and the city of Chico to work out whatever they need to do at that point.
But we would still receive that financial.
If the property line adjustment was made, that would be our expectation.
Okay, so that doesn't hinder on the grant application and the widening of Bruce Road.
Not from our standpoint. Again, this was an issue brought to us by the city, the developer. It allowed us to frankly collect $75,000 for a property that we're not currently using and make some improvements at Citrus.
Perfect.
The other point I would make, we kept the language regarding Citrus Elementary School because we want to almost hold ourselves accountable.
Sure.
That these dollars are going to go for that purpose, because Citrus Elementary School is one of the few schools that does not have off-site parking or drop-off zone, really needed for the safety of kids, and this will allow us to kind of push that work forward. So, with that said, I'll turn it over to the gentleman here to answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Any questions about this from our remote people?
My hand's up.
Okay, I don't see it, but please go ahead.
Okay, all right, I can see it, but okay.
I can see it too,
So
sorry.
my concern would be, I would like to see us make sure that there's a fence between the property that presumably the developer's gonna use and the campus, so that we don't have kids taking adventurous hikes when, you know, we're changing the purpose of that. So other than that, the other aspect I thought was really valuable was years ago when I used to walk that road with my dogs, we would come to the creek and there was no bridge. And I was told by the city, oh, well, as soon as the development comes, we'll have a bridge. And that would make traffic leaving Marsh not having to make a circle or U-turn and go back out, but they could go straight down, I think, Gooding Boulevard. That would be a real big help. So you guys have to do more than just low-income housing, which I think is number one. Get that bridge done too.
Dr. Kaiser, there already is a fence that marks our property, at least the property that we're using right now, so we already have that safety in place. Yep. So I didn't introduce this is John Cornish. He is with Gonzalez Development, and then we have Jen Stevens as well. So.
Do you have a picture, Kevin?
I believe we're working on a picture. We should show it.
There was some attached with our agenda.
Yeah, it should be with the agenda.
There you go. This one? That one.
I would be so happy for the end of Zoom meetings.
Yes. I think it get better at that.
Yep. The ladies in conversation, overload system.
Yeah, okay. We roll that down one. There you go.
Okay.
This is a 10-page. Well, let me ask you this. Do all of you and all of those working remote have your access to your agendas with these documents? That's perfect.
Yes.
Right there.
Yep.
The one right above it, actually, if we could start with that one. There, one more click. There you go, that's close enough.
Close enough?
Yeah. Well, thank you, Kevin. My name is Jim Stevens. I'm with North Star. We're the engineers from Marion Park, which is the initial effort to develop on the north side of the creek. And we've been involved since 2003 with Marion Park. And when we first came up with the concept, it was approved in 2005. There was, in the EIR, there was discussions with your predecessors, and Kelly's predecessors, and all of you guys' predecessors, about taking access across that piece. Back then, that fence was where it is now, which is kind of at the top of the crosshatched area. That particular piece of property is kind of it's in a low spot and it's kind of poorly drained.
Mm.
Our goal is once we poke our road through there, which was kind of agreed upon way back then, we're gonna use it as a detention facility because it holds water.
There you go.
And if you look at the next exhibit, you can see we have a detention facility shown. It's a little bit confusing because right in the middle of the detention facility, it says bus terminal. Bus terminal.
I saw that.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's just poorly placed. We're engineers, not graphic artists. And so that has its evidence right here. Nevertheless,
No, Dr. Kaiser, not school bus, it would be,
it's
public
just
transportation.
Public transportation.
Oh, okay.
And you can see the little leader pointing to where the white spot in the road is. We'll construct that with our development. And Kevin's correct, there is a grant application, an IIG grant, that the city is supposed to find out about at the end of this month.
Oh, okay.
And we've kind of put this negotiation all together based upon that, to provide a significant amount of affordable housing on the north side of that. So a couple of months ago, Kevin entertained us and we talked about how we're ready to start doing this. And you know, we're gonna negotiate, first of all, a flat out dedication to the city. And then we were gonna exchange with the city. And that seemed a little bit too cumbersome for this. This makes a lot more sense with, just to swap the boundary lines. It's boundary line modification. And if there's for value received, it says in the deeds, we can change the location of the actual property line. And the north-south line that runs through the roadway, that's the old boundary line. You see the notation there?
Yep.
And it switches up to the north where the fence is to the new boundary line. And then in a series of deeds, the district will deed that to, it's called MP North Fork LLC. That's the entity that holds that parcel. And then what we will do is construct a roadway to connect to Notre Dame, dedicate the right of way to the city, utilize where it says bus turnout for our detention pond, and then incorporate that little piece south of the road back into the development. So it ended up being really a nice win-win because we got our access. You get some value out of a property that is not terribly developable because of the shape that a roadway is gonna cut through it, so it cuts it in half. And it's kind of a liability for you right now. So we're taking that off your hands, and then we'll develop it and provide some access. Dr. Kaiser, your point is well taken on the bridge. We have through our EIR a series of triggers established as development commences that require additional improvements. And the development of this affordable housing project, along with some of the other stuff that's going on right now, will make that trigger. We have spoken with the city and they're very interested in helping us out construct that bridge. And so that hopefully if the grant's gonna come through, and the city's very confident that it is, they score very high in their checklist for grant applications. And as we all know, affordable is a very critical need right now. And so we all are very confident that this grant will be achieved, and it's a significant one for the city, and we'll finish Bruce Road, and it'll help us on Notre Dame, and it will allow for some relief of Notre Dame, for north-south arterial, by taking it through Merriam, and it'll allow easy access in and out of the development itself.
So is that grant, did you say it was a state grant?
Yes.
It was, so do you think any of all this budget craziness that's happening is in any way gonna impact that?
It's committed dollars.
Okay,
And
so it's
passed
already
through the
committed.
Fed, yeah.
Okay.
It's passed through to the, I think, federal original source, because we have to do it. Serious listening to me, sorry. It's tied to affordable housing. And so the state recognizes that as a very critical need also right now.
Now, does that happen to be the one that's more of the senior housing? Because I know is that a senior one?
Actually, no, the senior one is just further north
Further
on
down.
Notre Dame across the
Okay.
street in front of
Oh,
Humboldt.
so this is another one?
This is another one, yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's good.
I'm
And this
excited
is-
about it.
this is,
Yeah, that's great.
And it covers a range of income levels,
Mhm.
from low to extremely low.
Mhm.
And it has 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, and 3 bedroom, so there are some family opportunities as well.
Excellent.
Uh-huh.
So it's gonna be a good project.
And when do they, once all this gets, when do they think that's going to be
Yeah.
finished or worked on?
Good question.
Well, very soon, actually. Part of the obligation for the affordable housing project is that we make construct a connection out to Bruce Road.
Mhm.
And the city has indicated that they're willing to take care of that with this grant
Mhm.
to inspire the development of the housing.
Excellent.
So we brought in
Good.
a housing developer,
Mhm.
and they're under contract with the Marion developers, and everything looks pretty good right now. So all we're asking to do is your concurrence that we can switch that
Right.
property
Right.
and write you a big check.
All right, yeah, we don't want to say no to money.
So, are there any other questions?
Okay, can I
I'd
have a
love to make a
motion?
motion to approve.
Are you making it, Linda, and I'll second it?
That sounds good.
Okay, motion
All
by
right.
Linda Hovey, second by Dr. Kaiser. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye. Thank
Okay,
you.
passes
Thank you very much.
unanimously. Thank you very much,
Thanks for
gentlemen.
coming out. Okay, that is ours. It's coming out our end if that's not working.
Liz,
Yeah,
I get over there, pull John and then log on.
I told him to go to roll call.
Tom had to abstain, so I think we're back to having to do a voice.
okay, we will do a roll call vote on that, just to be sure. Thank you for bringing that to my attention, Eileen. Okay, Eileen, how do you vote?
Robinson,
Kaiser?
Kaiser, aye.
Lando?
Randall, aye.
Hovey, aye.
Griffin, aye. Okay, thank you for that. All right then, we will move on to our next item, which is once again, this is coming back to us, it is the public hearing with regards to increasing the level 1 developer fees for both commercial and industrial. And I know that we have been provided with additional information that we requested at our last regular meeting. And we've had a chance to digest that a little bit. And so, Kevin, what else do you have to say to us?
Well, the spreadsheet I provided answered, I think, the board's question one, could you delay the implementation date? And the answer to that is yes. And then at the bottom of the analysis, we just did a quick estimate. I'm using kind of an average of the number of applications we received over the last 3 years. That if we waited, or you waited to implement until January, that we would lose approximately $134,000 of developer fees. And if we didn't implement at all, an estimate of over roughly $537,000 of developer fees. So I think those were the questions the board had.
Right, and we did ask if we could separate commercial from residential, and that was,
Got an answer, I think, from Jim.
yes, was yes. And, right, so I think those did cover all of the questions we had. So does anyone have any further questions from Kevin at this point?
No, I do have a comment though, if I might. So I was one of the folks at the last meeting who wanted to explore this a little more. We had gotten some feedback, I think it was from Valley Contractors,
Yes.
this change. But you know, gosh, I hate to say this, but in light of this budget situation that we just talked about a few agenda items ago, I'm actually ready to go forward with the fees, not separating them out, not putting a delay. There is gonna be a slight delay, right?
The timing
Instead
is
of
that
June,
it's
July
60
1.
days after you take action.
Right, so, you know, and I hate to do that to the developers.
Yeah.
Who just left, but,
Yeah.
it's important that we do that for our kids. So that's my comment.
Yeah,
Follow Linda?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so I want to follow Linda, and, having these developers that just came before us was so encouraging because they actually used what word that hasn't been used by the city for like 6 months to a year, which is affordable. And there was supposed to be the senior citizen affordable housing. And we heard about that when I was testifying about vaping flavored tobacco back in December. So it's been quite a while. The city has publicly stated there is no affordable housing permits even coming before them. So I think this is crucial because otherwise we look like we're going to tell all people affected by these extreme budget cuts that instead of getting what we could legally, reasonably, based on data, get from the developers, we gave it back.
Yes.
And I just can't see us doing that. I think we're at a crisis and we're going to need every penny.
Agreed.
So I would like to
Well, wait,
move this action.
I think
Okay, yeah.
I think we might have, do we still have to have a public hearing again?
I think you should open up the public hearing and at
Oh,
least
okay.
allow anybody that
Yes,
wanted to
allow
speak.
anybody wants to-
Okay, I'm going to open up, before we take any votes or make any motions, I'm going to open up the public hearing.
We are monitoring email.
So if anybody wishes out there in TV land, Zoom land, to comment,
This is Julie Kissel, and I just have a brief comment to make regarding Kathy Kaiser's comments about affordable housing. I did get some information from the city of Chico today that they have 4 current affordable housing developments that are in the process of entitlement in the city right now. One of them is the senior housing, where there's homeless housing involved with that as well. Creekside Place, which is over on Notre Dame Boulevard, the one that you're referring to. And then Marion Park, the one that you just heard about. And then a third one is potentially at what will be vacated Jesus Center. And it's a special needs housing project. And then a Deer Creek Family Apartments. So 2 of the 4 are family housing, and the other 2 are specialized, just so that you have that information.
Now,
Can I ask you a question? I thought I saw in the documentation that if they are a special needs population, that they get a discount. Is that correct?
A discount in developer fees?
Yeah,
What we
there's
charge?
some kind of a discount.
Senior housing is discount.
Senior housing, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I thought there was.
okay, anything else? I also would like to comment that, much along the same line of what Linda was saying, that our budget situation, which has come to light in the last month, really does cause me to reconsider my vote on this. And furthermore, the little discussion we just had a bit earlier about the possibility of being able to borrow from this fund, although it would be a temporary borrowing, should we need it in a cash flow situation, because it sounds like if the state is going to be withholding payments, we may get into a little bit of a pickle there with our cash flow, and we want to have all resources available to us as possible. So that's my inclination as well. So I don't hear anything more from the public, so I'm going to close the public hearing. And
now I move the motion.
okay, Kathy moves the motion.
Before we move, may on how we can use the money that comes in from developer fees?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. They are used for facilities and for support of our facilities department.
That's what I thought. So it's not like, if we delay these for some way, it's not like we'd be able to move over and support our core educational programs in terms of like supplementing what we're doing.
No, it doesn't help, it does not help the core program. It would help, as Liz mentioned, possibly borrowing a cash component, and it does support, again, the facilities department.
Absolutely.
Right, so it must be spent on new construction and related development. It can also be used to modernize facilities that are aging, but it is very specific in its use.
That was my understanding. Thank you. My concern is that we've all talked, and I think we all agree that affordable housing is a key issue in our community right now. And if we are seeing some more people move into that space, and it sounds like the city is seeing some applications, would a temporary pushback on the fees encourage more people to do that?
I think so, but I don't know.
Okay, just a rhetorical.
Yep.
I'm prepared to vote at this point, but I haven't said my piece.
Okay, did we get a second? I know Kathy made the motion. We still need a second on the motion.
I'll second.
I'll second.
Eileen.
Okay, Eileen will second the motion, so Dr. Kaiser made the motion to approve the increase. Yes?
Did you hear that I would second the
Yes,
motion?
and Eileen seconded the motion. So are there any other questions or comments before we take a vote? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, Thomas say no. And Eileen, where do you stand? Eileen says aye. So we have 4 in favor, 1 opposed, and so this passes. This item passes. Okay, thank you. We will move on then to our next item, which is having to do with summer maintenance projects. And I believe we're going to hear from Mr. Carver.
I'm going to carry the ball.
You're going to carry the ball.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably can hear you better.
Included in your packet was a list of the projects
Yes.
specifically, and you'll see to the department's credit, they actually took a look at the projects, understanding we may need flexibility, and really carved off almost $300,000 of things that they would like to have done, but really are holding at this point to maybe help us with kind of our budget challenge. So I want to give them a lot of credit for that.
Yes.
And then I did want to show you just real quickly pictures that are here of some of the work that will be done, and just a couple of good things that have been done.
This is a lot of work. Is this a typical summer maintenance list?
It is. We
Curious.
typically spend $1 million every summer, and it's really made a huge impact. All of our carpets have been redone, our schools are painted. I really encourage you to look at our schools, because I've been around Chico a long time.
Yeah.
And I played around these schools as a little kid, and I just think they've never been better.
I would agree.
I'm really impressed.
Excellent.
A good example here is Pleasant Valley High School. The carpet, you don't really get the sense of how bad it is, but you really can almost see through it. So we're going to redo the carpet at Pleasant Valley this next summer.
It's the library.
The library.
Library.
It is bad. Yep. And clicking. No problem.
You have to click the little arrow over on the side.
It's just the way it goes.
Oh,
There we go.
there we go.
That's Sierra View.
Yeah.
You obviously see we're going to be doing some work kind of on the fascia boards there. Yeah, another look here, it's a fascia board. These are Chico Junior High School. We're going to reseal their basketball court and area. You can see some cracks have developed in there. This is the perfect type of project to do with these routine restricted maintenance. We do this work and it really takes care of itself for another 5 to 10 years.
Excuse me, Eileen, did you have a question or comment?
Yes, I did, thank you. Are you talking about the non-existent carpet in the library, Kevin?
That's
Yeah.
it, that very transparent looking carpet.
Yes, I know it well.
This is Fairview High School. We're gonna reseal and do the asphalt and basketball courts at that school as well. See cracks there. I wanna say that some work has already been done. The gym floors have already been done throughout all the schools, and you can see we're trying new products, and it really looks good.
That's very nice.
Yeah, so very impressed with some of that work that's already being done. Here's a picture of our custodians getting up on top of some of the ductwork on these gymnasiums, which I probably would bet hasn't been cleaned since they were installed.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it's just a tough area to get to, and often with our constricted timelines in the summer, it's tough for them to do, but they are going again above and beyond. This was just completed today at Hooker Oak Elementary, putting money into the landscaping out in front of the school.
That's great.
So we're doing some beautification work as well. And you've already seen the video, I think, but if this comes through. It's 1 minute. Well, it's sort of come through. Well, it's not coming through. So we'll stop that. But I just, again, want to really thank that group of workers. They've done a really great job of kind of getting advanced work done and some cleanliness. We're going to be ready for next school year, and our schools are never going to be better.
That's great.
I had a quick question. On the list were renovations to the athletic fields at both the high schools.
Correct.
What's left to be done?
Well, so we looked at Chico High, for instance, its softball fields really had a need for improvements in comparison to the work that was done over the baseball fields and just the general athletics. So if you go by there now, I really encourage you to go out there. You're going to see all new concrete and landscaping that was done, bleachers and new boards across there. The whole infield was redone.
I have to go look. I have not been by. So.
It really looks sharp. Actually, we did paving so that now all the bleachers sit on paving and not just grass.
Nice.
Looks much more professional. And we did concrete on the dugouts over the junior or JV field, which had not been done. So it really is a really nice job on those fields. Pleasant Valley didn't have quite the same need as its softball field.
Right.
So we're working to redo their tennis courts. And we're still getting some bids, and we're a little delayed on those projects, but that's kind of been PV's focus, is get their tennis courts redone. So we kind of, through maintenance, to their credit, said, hey, there's some improvements in athletic that we think we can do with our maintenance money.
Excellent.
And so we did that for both high schools.
Thank you.
Okay.
Kathy shared her appreciation that we've had Title IX suits over that in the past, so.
Yes.
Appreciation for
Yeah.
keeping little bit of quality on both genders.
Right, right. That's absolutely true. Okay, thank you for that. That is just a,
John has something to close any presentations that are already done.
Oh, okay.
I was going to also, is it okay, Erica, if I get out of this whole Zoom thing so I can just go back to the agenda, because I want to be able to pull up all of the board policies to see the wording if I need to.
I'll watch for the hands.
There's no
Five, it
action on
says
this one.
discussion action.
But apparently there isn't any action required.
We do, actually, we ask you, and you do every year, take action to approve these, because what it allows us to do, it gives us a cover on related to contract work, if we have to do any contract work additionally out there. So, and also then we feel like you as the board have kind of approved us to put this within the budget.
Oh, okay.
So we do ask you to take action.
So I move 5.5.
I'll second the motion. This is Eileen.
Okay, motion by Dr. Kaiser and second by Eileen Robinson. Any further discussion about this?
Yeah. Eileen has her hand up.
Okay, let's go with Eileen first.
Okay, Eileen? Did you have a comment?
Robinson, aye.
Oh.
No, I didn't signal a comment. Thank you.
Okay.
Eileen, you have your hand up, so if you can just put your hand down, that would be great.
So my comment, and you know, I'm that bean counter person. kudos to everyone to cut $340,000 out of this summer maintenance budget, but we're still talking about $700,000 as we go into a really dark fiscal time. So I'm just wondering, if we could maybe move some more onto that deferred list and save a little money here and there.
That you have to use 3%?
Yeah, the 300,000 that are listed here in the current year, so
Mhm.
we had to expend those dollars. And then at this point, the governor hasn't given us full flexibility on RMA, so we're gonna have to spend those dollars anyway. It's just a lower contribution for what we know today.
Okay.
And I would say that these projects are things that if we can get them done right now, there's still enough fund balance in the RRMA that I think we have more flexibility to make reductions going forward. But I think if we don't go forward with like the carpet at Pleasant Valley High School, for instance, some of those types of projects that are listed here, it's not gonna allow us to really dip into those RMA dollars,
No,
flex them out as much as we
I
can.
get it. So this is all RRMA,
It is.
even the athletic facilities, because it talks about the remainder of the budget?
Yes.
Okay, that is not measure.
No
Okay.
bonds, no bond dollars were used. These are just strictly routine restricted maintenance projects.
Right. Still just, doesn't sit well with me, but I understand. So, okay, call your vote, I'm sorry.
Okay, so we will go ahead then and take the vote. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
I'm
Okay.
gonna oppose.
Okay, I vote aye. So we have 4 in favor, 1 against, and Linda is against. And so it still does pass, so we will move forward with these projects for the summer. Okay, onward to number 6, which is a discussion action item regarding vendor recommendation for a 5-year contract or agreement for duplicating equipment.
Yes, so this is a substantial contract. That's why we bring it to you as a separate agenda item. 5 years ago, Chico Unified School District issued a formal request for proposal, an RFP, for copier services. The IT department was heavily involved. Kind of previous to that, it was left up to business services, but these machines have gotten more complex.
Absolutely.
The connectivity, IT was really much more involved, and I think we made better decisions because of it. We did ultimately reward that contract to Ray Morgan, and our contract expires at the end of this fiscal year. So we started the process of looking at what would be our next process for acquiring copiers, and we looked at 3 options. We could issue a new RFP and really kind of open it up to full competition. We could have issued a request for qualifications, where we actually limited that to some extent, but again, opened it up. Or we could use a current statewide contract, use that as a piggyback contract for something that had already been vetted publicly. And so after kind of looking at this, we also went out to our office managers and we put in a survey to say, what are your feelings related to copiers? Are you happy with the service you're receiving? And we did receive over 76% of our office managers really felt that they were comfortable with Ray Morgan, but really wanted to go with Canon type machines. And so they kind of supported the idea that we would use a piggyback or a statewide contract to turn copies.
Does Ray Morgan currently provide us with cannons?
Right now, our contract is Rico machines.
Okay.
And so we really didn't feel like those were as
Right.
high quality
Right.
as the Canon machines. And we kind of, education also a year ago entered into the same statewide contract with Ray Morgan and reported to us through their IT department what a good deal it was, how happy they are with the machines, the service level, and they experienced savings from that contract. So at this point in time, we recommend entering into a new 5-year contract with Ray Morgan and related services. The same provisions that we had in our previous contract with flexibility of moving machines in and out of the contract without additional costs will remain. And also the requirements for certain performance provisions. For instance, if a machine breaks down twice in 30 days, we can request a new machine. And those are individual type provisions. And I just want to state the recommendations are based on the following: known costs utilizing a statewide contract, flexibility and accountability of performance with additional contract provisions, reduced costs from our current contract, better quality machines with Canon, better sized machines based on our historical data now out of them, strong support from the office staff to continue with Ray Morgan, approving the level of service provided by Ray Morgan, and that was tough the first couple of years. But I will say the last 3 years they performed. And then really, in this environment, with what we talked about earlier, reducing the risk of the unknown costs for this economic is really a big deal. And I just gotta point that out, that we think knowing what we're getting into for the next 5 years, keeping our office managers happy is gonna be important. So for all those reasons, we recommend moving forward with a 5-year contract with everyone.
Okay. Any questions for Kevin about this?
Well, can you remind me and for the public what those costs will be? Are we seeing an increase in our monthly costs?
No, well, actually, compared to what we've been paying,
Yes.
we estimate we'll see a reduction in costs of about $10,000 a year.
Okay.
Now, there are other companies
Yes.
that have contacted me and sent me information, and the challenge there is we didn't actually ask for an RFP, so we didn't provide kind of the apples-to-apples comparison that they might needed, or they would have needed to really provide that. We have heard different numbers about you could save this much more, and one of the vendors that I've seen, it appears that there might be a savings, but again, the unknowns related to moving over to a new company and new machines, in our opinion, just outweigh staying for.
And just because we would do that if they were here, they did send an email and just came in so Kevin can share the email with the board, but again, we did not go through an RFP process, so
Right.
it's really inappropriate to be having those discussions.
I agree.
So we did receive an email. It states, "Hello, my name is Susan Dickinson, and I am viewing virtually as a representative of Sharp Electronics Corporation to support our offer of a $30,000 rebate check or credit for additional technology equipment coordination with the coastal businesses proposal for duplicating equipment." So that was another piece of information, is they offered $30,000, which appreciate, but again, we didn't go to a formal RFP process. And you know, I think we've acknowledged it before, our current vendor, Ray Morgan, has provided more than $30,000 for support of technology in classrooms. And
You know, I have to say, for the record, I have worked with Coastal in the past, and they are a really good company. I have had great service from them. But I stand on the protocols. If we did not do an RFP, RFQ even, there really is there's no opportunity for someone to put in another bid, even if it would save us some money. So I would say we go ahead, but I would also like the Business Services Department to, in 5 years, to do, yeah, to do it and go and shop around. It's good practice to do that after this contract expires.
Okay, anyone else want to speak to this item?
Yes, this is Eileen. I appreciate, Kevin, that you went out to the office managers and got input on their experiences with what we've had. And also, the number of departments that rely on a couple of copiers at the secondary sites. When one goes down, it shuts down downtown attendance and main office, and so it's critical that they stay in service. So I appreciate that we have that lemon clause, I guess you could call it, in the contract, and I just I hope that we do take another look. I don't know where it said more cost.
Okay, and anyone else?
I think campus uses Ray Morgan and Ken.
Okay. Okay, can I get a motion here?
I didn't hear that.
Did someone want to make a motion?
Oh, I move.
I'll second that.
Okay, Kathy made the motion, seconded by Tom. Is there any further discussion?
there was one more email that just came in.
Okay.
So I'll need to read it.
Alrighty.
From again, Susan Dickinson. It says Sharp won the Buyers Laboratory Product Line of the Year Award in 2020.
We have many school districts throughout California that we can provide as references. Coastal Business is using our state of California contract for their proposal, which is a piggybackable agreement.
Okay. Well, you had a process that you went through.
Exactly.
And, you know, it seems like this is trying in a sense to blow up the process, which, you know, we're not really going to want to do. We don't want to set a precedent that, I think this happened once before in the past that I can recall, that somebody wasn't happy with the way that, you know, our award went, and they showed up at the meeting and they tried to throw a monkey wrench into it. And so I personally feel that we should just go with what has been done. I think we should highly respect what our office staff, any of the people working in the offices are recommending, because having worked in offices my whole life, I realize what a copy machine
Can ruin your day.
can do to your whole operation. So anyhow,
But I would have to beg the question, did we do the process as we should have? Should we have gone out to bid? Maybe, probably,
well,
but
yeah, it's a
We'll pass
done
that
deal.
down, yeah.
It's a done deal, and that's, you know, I'd
So-
say for future reference,
yes.
you know, on these big things, maybe we should
Yeah, 5-year
say, you know,
contract, a long
maybe,
time.
please, maybe give that a little bit more thought, and
Yes.
that way it's totally
Yep.
clear.
Very good.
So, okay, we'll take the vote then. All those in favor of this contract being approved, please signify by saying aye. Do I have to roll call again? Oh, yeah, I do have to roll call again. Okay. Eileen and Kathy said aye. Tom, how do you say? Tom?
Madam President,
Yes.
I think we needed to do a roll call again.
Yeah, that's what we're doing right now.
Oh, okay.
Did you vote aye?
Yes, Robinson, I
Okay.
that you were ready.
Yes, okay, thank you. Kathy?
Aye.
Okay.
Daniel, aye.
Okay.
Hubby, aye.
Griffin, aye. Okay, that passes unanimously then. We will move on then to a special human resources action, which has to do with a resolution that is proposed for Classified Employees Appreciation Week. Mr. Hanlon.
Okay, and as promised from our last meeting, bringing a proclamation regarding classified personnel. That May 17th through the 23rd is Classified Employees Appreciation Week. And I have resolution number 150920 that you'll read. But I did want to just briefly summarize for the board some of the things going on around the district in recognition of our classified folks. We have marquees, notation on marquees around the district. We have M&O, the beauty baskets with custom face masks, assorted candies and nuts.
Nice.
Fairview had a drive-through taco bar, and so that they could
Sounds
observe
good right now.
social
Doesn't that
distancing. So did Bidwell, they had a coffee truck in the
Nice.
parking lot. Also Marsh had a drive-through lunch with Starbucks gift cards and a thank you slideshow. Neil Dowd had Schubert's gift cards and assorted candies. And of course, you saw Sierra View earlier, they were delivering goodies as we were Zooming. So a lot of them around the district. I think the district office did some baskets also. So a lot of recognition going on out there for classified folks. As best we can, because they're not all here.
Right.
But they're delivering them to their houses when they're not.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Okay.
Said earlier, we loved our teachers, well, we love our classified
We do.
as well. They
Absolutely, they make
Support
everything,
it and make it
everything
all work.
function. Everything function and function
Fairview's Taco
smoother.
Bar's tomorrow, if anybody wants to go
Oh,
check it out.
Yes, Thursday.
It's
Tomorrow.
taco bar.
Taco Bar at Fairview.
Okay, I am going to go ahead then and read a resolution 1509-20. The week of May 17th through 23rd is hereby designated as Classified Employee Appreciation Week. Whereas the education of youth is essential to the future of our community, state, country, and world. And whereas classified employees are the backbone of our public education system, and whereas classified employees work directly with students, educators, parents, volunteers, business partners, and community members. And whereas classified employees support the smooth operation of offices, the safety and maintenance of buildings and property, and the safe transportation, healthy nutrition, and direct instruction of students. And whereas our community depends upon and trusts classified employees to serve students. And whereas classified employees, with their diverse talents and true dedication, nurture students throughout their school years. Now therefore, be it resolved that the Chico Unified School Board trustees proclaim March 17th through 23rd, 2020 to be Classified Employee Appreciation Week. And be it further resolved that the Chico Unified School Board of Trustees strongly encourages all members of our community to join in this observance, recognizing the dedication and hard work of these individuals.
Here, 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 here.
Hear, hear. Okay, may I have a motion that we adopt this?
I heard something.
Is that you, Kathy?
Yeah.
You just moved it, okay.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, moved by Dr. Kaiser, seconded by Eileen Robinson. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye?
Hooray!
Okay. I think that was unanimous.
To the system.
Okay, that's,
Communicate that tomorrow to.
okay, thank you very much. Alrighty, so now we are moving on to an important part of our process, which is approving changes to bylaws and board policies. So the way we're gonna work this is we will identify those policies which people have proposed changes to or they have issues with. And all of the other policies we will then approve in one motion. So I'm going to check with Linda first here, and then I'm going to go around and check with everybody else. So
I have
Linda,
nothing to pull. Thank
Linda
you.
has nothing to pull. Tom, do you have anything you wish to pull? You do not?
He is not going to pull
Okay.
anything at this time.
Okay. Then let me move then to Eileen. Eileen, is there anything you wish to pull?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. Dr. Kaiser, do you have an item or items to pull?
Yes, I wanna pull, 5131.
Okay, 5131.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Any others?
Not for me.
Okay. Then I would like to pull board bylaw, which is 9323. And let's see.
This
Sorry. Just a second, I think I had one more.
Yeah, you had another one.
I had another one that had to do with safety and just
Is that the
insertion.
phone?
5142.
I'm sorry, 5142?
Or is it 5131, there's A, I think.
8,
A.
mobile communication devices.
Oh, that one. No, I think I'm gonna leave that one alone.
Okay.
I think that there was one, oh gosh, I guess I didn't put it on.
5142.
5142. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, what the issue was, okay, yeah, I think so. Okay, so do I have a motion for the remainder of these other than the 3 that are pulled?
I move approval.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion by Eileen Robinson, a second by Dr. Kaiser. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, so we approve the remainder.
What was the third one?
The third one was, Kathy's was 5131, mine was 5142, and then I had a board bylaw,
Got it.
which was 9323.
Got it.
Okay, so I'm gonna just go up to mine, which is 9323, since it's the first one on the list. And the only issue I had with that is they were going to change our maximum time for our meeting to last till 10:30. And previously, we had enacted into our bylaws that we would end all meetings by 10 o'clock unless we took a vote and decided to extend. And we also had put into our bylaws that we would not have a meeting that would go longer than 4 hours. That would be a regular meeting. In recognition of the fact that after 4 hours of contemplating all of this, people would be tired and they wouldn't be able to make as good decisions as they would better rested. So that's what I would like to see, is that we not make the change and that we just continue with how we have had it in the past, where we restrict ourselves to 4 hours unless we vote otherwise, restrict ourselves to 10 o'clock unless we vote otherwise.
Do we have a reason for the change to 10:30? I'm kind of curious why
No.
they would recommend that.
No, they didn't say anything.
These, of course, are recommendations that come from CSBA, so I
Right.
think you're seeing what's maybe reflected throughout the state and other areas.
Okay, so,
Kelly, do we just turn it down? Is that what we do?
No, we can modify the.
No, I mean, what we can do, there are other changes to this other than that. So we can either stay with the original language, which is absolutely fine, there was nothing legal that was changed in here. Or we can just stay with that third paragraph down, stay with the language that was originally there, and accept the other changes. It's really up to the board.
Well, I'd like to accept the changes, except for the adjournment time being 10:30, leave it at 10 p.m.
okay. And what about the 4 hours? Do you have anything to say
Yes,
about
yeah,
that?
we shall leave the 4 hours in there.
Okay.
So leave the third paragraph as it was previously written.
Correct.
Okay.
Do we want to add that final sentence, though, the meeting shall be extended no more than once, and subsequently may be adjourned to a later date?
Sure.
Yeah, we can.
Yes, because I think that was in the original as well.
Mhm.
Because we don't want to keep, I think that's really asking a lot of people.
So I just have a question, is the closed session part of those 4
No.
hours?
No.
No, the closed session is
It's
separate.
a
This
good
is
question, though.
This is the regular meeting. Okay, so let's take a vote on that. Do we have a motion to accept that which was mentioned? Did you all hear that, what Linda had said?
That's my motion.
Yes.
Okay, that was Linda's motion to approve it, to retain the language we previously had, but just to go ahead with the other language that they had regarding the other paragraphs. Do I have a second for Linda's motion? Anyone?
I'll second the motion.
Okay.
Second the motion.
Okay, second by Eileen Robinson. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, I think that was an aye from everyone, so we'll say that board bylaw was passed unanimously. Next up, Kathy, is yours, which is board policy 5131 with regards to conduct.
I think Kathy left the room momentarily.
Kathy, did you go away? Are you there? Okay, then let's tackle where did Kathy go? Let's tackle 5142 instead, because that's very easy, what I'm suggesting. And I don't know why they did this way to begin with, but there is just a little bit of language in there that says that, let me read it. Governing board recognizes the importance of providing a safe school environment that is conducive to learning, and promotes student safety and well-being. Appropriate measures should be implemented to minimize the risk of harm. Oh wait, that's not the one, I don't think though.
5142.
5142,
Well, what it had to do with is that there's supposed to be a safety plan, and for whatever reason, it didn't say that this should be shared. And it was, I was just like, why wouldn't you, if there is a overarching plan, why wouldn't each individual school be sharing that as part of the overall plan?
So there may be parts of it that aren't shared because you don't want to necessarily make that public for somebody who might be looking to compromise the site, particularly like maps of the site, exits, entrances.
Okay, so it should be left to the discretion then, is what you're saying, for each individual school to decide because of their particular circumstances.
My understanding is that there are certain parts of the plan that are not made public, that can compromise the safety of the school site.
Okay, I just wanted to hear clarification on that because I sort of suspected something like that, but I just thought, well, that's kind of weird why you wouldn't do that. But, okay, so I withdraw my opposition or concerns about 5142.
Well, I move to approve it then.
And can I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Linda Hovey to approve 5142, second by Tom. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye? Aye. Okay, that one passes. Okay, Kathy, so your concerns about the policy regarding conduct, which is 5131.
Correct. So, my concern is if you, look down at the, number 6 on page 1.
Yes.
And again, this is talking about people, students, going to and from school, but the delineation of what that means is very, vague and very interpretive. And it says in 6, obscene acts or use of profane, vulgar, or abusive language. Pretty vague, I thought, so I looked them up. The only way you get a definition of profane if someone says something about a religious belief or practice. In other words, it's defined by religion. And I found that very
We're losing you, Kathy.
Favor. And so I don't know what and how we do with that. The second one is vulgar. Vulgar is kind of crude language if you look at the definition, referring to bodily functions or sex. But the use of trying to hurt someone with the language. So I thought that given that this is supposed to be policed by us going to and from school, that we really, I don't see how we can enforce saying that somebody is profane language when it's only according to the definition about religious.
Well, Kathy, I have to disagree with that because I also looked up the word profane and as part of reading this, and its use today, its modern usage is more to treat something considered sacred. Well, it could be anything not sacred in the literal sense of a religion, but something that somebody holds dear with irreverence or disrespect. So it could be anything about a person. I could be saying, your mama, is a bitch or something, and that could be considered profane. And I mean, I think the whole purpose behind this really is to protect the bus drivers in a lot of ways from being subjected to dealing with these type of behaviors among students and give them some basis for intervening. And, you know, if children are doing these sorts of things on the buses, you know, to be able to hold them to account. Now, certainly, if you were ever had a child that was being, you know, disciplined for that, there would be some sort of hearing, and, you know, if it rose to the level, there would be discussions about what did the child say, and would it fall into any of these categories. So I don't think removing any of that or changing any of that really is necessary, because it just widens the spectrum.
We're talking about going to and from school.
Right, this includes things like buses.
But we can like, excuse me, Kathy, like when a kid is going to school on a late start, let's say, or one of those type of issues, we want to protect the Great Harvests of the world, or the Dutch Brothers of the world, or the 7-Elevens, where we've had to go in, that's to school, and they are abusing employees or somebody that's in one of those things, with one of those things. That's how we use that. That's to and from. On the way home, they're doing that. They stop in, and then all of a sudden they're abusing people or doing different things, and that's how we kind of use that in our policy.
So I guess it's really having a little bit further reach, enabling us to, you know, reach out to try to make sure our students are not disturbing other people in the community when they're going to and from school, which, you know.
And at times other children.
Yes. And other children,
bullying,
exactly.
Harassing
Right, exactly. So, I mean, I do see that it is rather broad, but.
That's subjective too, but.
So, just to help you guys with this, it's ed code and we can't change anything.
Okay, it's ed code and not subject to change. Yeah, that wasn't an addition. That wasn't a change. That already exists, and unless we were to just say, you know, well, we can't get rid of it. So.
It is the law, it is ed
I
code.
can't hear, I'm sorry, it's really horrible sound.
It is bad, I agree.
Is that a literal statement that we can't change anything?
It is ed code. We cannot change that because it is ed code.
To and from school is ed code.
Okay. So I personally feel that, you know, these all have multiple levels of review with regards to discipline, and so I don't find that objectionable just because it is broad. It just gives us more options if we see situations, you know, that are out of control. So
I'd like to move approval of board policy 5131 with the changes suggested.
what changes?
The changes in red.
Oh, the changes, okay, okay.
CSBA.
Okay, the CSBA changes, okay. That's garbled. Can you try again?
Or type it.
Or type it? Whoever just spoke?
That was Kathy.
Oh. Do I have a second?
We can't hear it.
You couldn't hear Linda's motion?
Okay.
Oh, she moved the policy with the changes CSBA had made.
Oh, okay, I'll second that motion, and I have a comment.
Okay, go.
Are you ready for a comment?
Yes, sir, yes, ma'am.
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I know that, well, first of all, I support the language that CSBA has proposed in compliance with ed code. And I am aware of a number of situations off campus where staff has had reports of student conduct, and staff went to the locations off campus. One was in a shopping mall and another in another off-campus location. And it was very useful that they were able to confront the students that were using profanity and targeting a Muslim student that was wearing the hijab, and I appreciate that those avenues for stopping what, you know, can be a real negative impact on a student available to us.
Okay, any further comments? All right, we'll take a vote. All those in favor, please. I'm sorry, was Tom, are you saying something?
Nope.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All right.
Kathy?
Yes, I.
She's shaking her
No, but my comment is, if we're given this and it's ed code and we can't do anything with it, then why the hell are we voting?
But we were only voting on the changes that were in red.
We're in red.
Yeah, on these policies, there are changes in red.
Mine aren't in red. I don't have any red. I have printed.
Kathy, the ones you have printed out don't come out with the red.
Oh,
Well, that explains a lot.
You have to do it online.
that explains a lot.
Yeah, you gotta look at it.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah.
It does have
Changes
cross
in
outs.
number 2, Kathy, the language is to the school program
Yeah, okay.
is added.
Yeah. I saw that, I mean, but I thought that was, that's, yeah.
Okay, well, that, we'll have to try to make sure that you're able to see those kind of things, or at least have those pointed out then.
They're online.
They're online. Okay. All right, so that was approved, and now we can move forward to our next item, which is approval, ratification of the employment agreement for our Assistant Superintendent of Business Services. Would anyone like to talk about this?
Yes, I hate moving this because he's just told us how broke we're gonna be.
Well,
I move it.
okay, is there a second?
Absolutely, I will second. We're in good hands.
Okay, I just want to make mention that, you know, and Kathy, you can certainly reiterate this as well and confirm this, is that since Kevin has been our Assistant Superintendent of Business Services, we have had a much better time managing all of our financial affairs and understanding our financial affairs and feeling confident in the moves that have been made. So, I
I
wholeheartedly
thought it was all
approve this.
Jacqueline.
Oh.
You knew that was coming.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, yeah, he's just a figurehead, she does all the work.
Wait a minute. So we do need to report out that the only change to the contract is the term of the contract. And it
Okay.
extends it 1 year.
The only,
Since Kevin came our way, and that is the tie-in between our budget, our numbers, and the delivery of education. That was not highlighted for us in past experiences with our business managers, and I immediately appreciated Kevin making delivery of student services in the classroom the priority behind our budget building, and explaining how all of those things do tie in. So I appreciated that. And what he's brought to the district.
thank you. Now, you said 1 year, but I thought yours, for example, is 3.
It adds an additional year. So we're approving a 3-year contract, but it only changes it by 1 year.
It only changed. Now, is that true for both of
Correct.
the 2 contracts that were being considered tonight? Okay, just to make that clear. Alrighty, so we have a motion by Dr. Kaiser, a second by Linda Hovey. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, approved
Thank you. Tough times
unanimously.
ahead.
Hey, you're stuck with us for another number of years. Okay, our next one is approval, ratification of the amended employment agreement with our superintendent, Kelly Staley. Any questions or comments regarding this?
Yes, I'd like to make a comment.
Yes.
I noticed today that, as happens every time there is a budget downturn, people are starting to make comments about how much state employees make and publishing all the salaries and whatnot. And I just want to say that I think for both of these two, we have got a great deal, and I just want to really express
Yes.
confidence and pleasure with our entire administrative team.
Thank you.
I second that.
Yes.
It's going to be important to keep pointing out all the good things they do, as again, I saw today 2 different editorial places about
Yes, I think the state wanted to implement a pay cut if I read something. of
Yes.
this, yeah.
So was that a motion to approve this also, Tom?
It is.
Okay, so Tom is moving, passage, and Eileen has seconded that. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Wholeheartedly, a big resounding aye.
Yay.
Yay. We're
Thank you.
happy to have you. Okay, our next is going to be any items from the floor. Are there any more people out there who are watching and wish to send something in?
All right, Erica, Kelly, nothing?
We're not seeing it? No new comments. Alrighty, any announcements from anybody here or there remotely?
Taco Bell at Fair, no, Taco Bar.
Taco Bar.
Jim just wants Taco Bell.
Kentucky Fried Chicken. That's what you know how to say
I
Taco
hereby
Bell.
adjourn our meeting. Oh, sorry.
Okay,
No, you got an announcement.
I do want to make just one real quick statement. We have been getting lots of questions tonight about if we go back to school, will we follow state and local requirements as they pertain to COVID? And the answer to that is absolutely yes. We will follow all legal mandates. So just want to clarify that if anybody is listening and can hear.
Okay, no intention of going rogue.
No, not
Okay,
rogue
not
yet.
at this point. Okay,
Thank you.
our meeting is now adjourned.